Okay, let's talk about some of your inspiration. And you talked about some of the television shows that you just love. So tell me about that and why you like those shows.
Well, currently there's a lot of exciting programs on television from that design aesthetic. I think Ugly Betty, that's been on for a couple of years, it's colorful. It's got, it's really out of the box in terms of, would people really have an office that looks like that? Well, maybe in New York where they're set. But I think it provides great inspiration, not just the sets, but the clothes as well. Another program that's on cable right now, starting its second season, is Mad Men, which is about advertising men that work on Madison Avenue. And it takes place in the early 60s, which is just such a great time period for both fashion design and interior design. And so, I'm, constantly switching back and forth between oogling over the clothes and the sets, and it's just such fun inspiration. I remember, years ago when Wonder Years was on, and looking at those sets and thinking, well, we had that in our house, and we had that in our house, we had that in our house, and it was really fun from a nostalgia point of view. But I think that I've always taken great inspiration from both television shows as well as film. I've grown up with a love of it, and when I was able to spend a couple years when I was in Los Angeles working in set design, that really came about my first week on the job when I was in LA. I read a magazine about a woman who was a set decorator on a soap opera. And I said to myself, I had just started this great new job, and I thought, this is what I really want to do, and someday that's what I'm going to do. So I have to admit, a guilty pleasure that I had when I was growing up, and I still tune in occasionally. I was a big soap opera fan. General Hospital was a big favorite. It was the Luke and Laura years. And so when I read this article that was talking about this woman being a set decorator on a soap opera, I thought, wow, it doesn't get any better than that. And little would I know that 5 years later, I would end up being able to get into set design, and I had an opportunity with a production designer to visit the set of General Hospital, which was very funny. And just to see everything from the other side, which is just not how we really think it looks, was exciting. And what I was able to do was really take back and forth what I learned from behind the camera and what you see in front of the camera. And I found that my training in design helped what I did behind the camera as a assistant set decorator, and what I learned being an assistant set decorator really helped me in my design business when I ended up going back to that a few years later and moving back to Denver and starting out my own company.
Well, I think that translation between your experiences and the reality of what you do is a very big part of what everyone brings to the design field. So the more experiences you have, and the more that you allow your creativity and inspiration to come into what you do, I think the more exciting it is.
It is, and it's interesting. Everybody talks about all these the design shows on television right now, and I think that it's a dual-edged sword. I think that they've been fabulous for us in that they've raised people's awareness about design in general, and I think that it's just so interesting to me how often that you end up having conversations about design with people that are not in the field, and you wouldn't really think that it would be something that they would care about. But I think in general, Americans care about it a lot more. They know a lot more. They're a lot more savvy. The internet has, certainly led to that. But I think the downside of what these shows do, which is what I really saw when I was working in set design, is that things aren't really what they appear. And, unfortunately what the public sees is that it was done very quickly, it was done on a shoestring budget. That's not so the reality, because, I did an episode of one of those shows a couple years ago, and, it was a great experience, but what the public doesn't see is that, we beg, borrow, and steal to get products from people to meet that budget for that show. It's never what it would be sold at to the public. And we don't charge for our time because they're giving us publicity. So it's skewed. It's not, really what it is. But at the same time, the trade-off is that it is giving people an awareness, and it's our job as professionals to educate them.
Right.
So
I agree with that.
I think it has good and bad.
Well, I agree with you about that, and I think that the more people are aware of it, the more we have to work a little bit harder to educate. And I could get on a soapbox about blogging and things like that, but we'll say that for another time. But let's talk a little bit more about inspiration. I want to get back to that because I know that you're a big traveler and you're
Yes.
getting ready to go to China,
I am.
which is very exciting. And you've been on some amazing trips, and I think it's always around your birthday.
September is my favorite month to travel.
Mhm.
So I tend to travel a lot around September, October, and then usually in May. And I have been very fortunate in my lifetime. I grew up in a family of travelers. My mother is still working as a travel agent, and I realized that I've had opportunities that most people haven't. I grew up, really loving travel and having a thirst for that. When I was in college, I had an opportunity to go on semester at sea, which changed my life. And I went around the world on that trip, and I shared that experience with 500 kids and went to a lot of third world countries. And I think that it was that experience that one really just grew my thirst for wanting to travel more, and also my compassion for countries that are completely different from how we live, and all the wonderful opportunities that we have that we appreciate. But traveling made me really appreciate what the good fortune and just the luck that I've had to be born into the family that I was, and to be born into this country, and in this day and age when these things are possible. And we live in a global world where the cotton that is grown in Georgia and it ends up in a factory in China, and that we are all tied together. And you realize it more and more when you travel and you get an understanding of what they think about us, and we learn more about what they're about. And so it's inspirational for me on many levels, profoundly on a design level, because I go and I see these rice paddies in Vietnam, and the colors and the sky, and and all the amazing textiles. So from a color standpoint, I always come back with these new palettes in my head. And color is one of the things that I've always been known for in my business. And I do get a lot of color inspiration from my travels. I mean, I have to say that the lighting changes everywhere you go. It changes from city to city here in our country, but when you travel and you see the different colors just in the landscape, that always has a profound impact on me. And then from just a consciousness perspective, I go and I visit these third world countries, and I come back and I want to do more. I recently was on a semester at sea. It was a little mini reunion that they were bringing alumni back together. They were raising money, but there was a woman who had been on the ship maybe 10, 15 years ago, and recently started an organization called Kiva.org. And she works, it's a microlending organization, and she works with all these people in third world countries, not asking for contributions, but asking for loans. And so, my travel connects me to these people, and it connects me in a way that I want to further my design business, and I want to further my growth as a human being, and be able to give back in ways, any way I can.
That's great. It's really exciting to hear that, because I think that's a very big part of what I do too. I care about what happens in our community. And a few years ago, we were very fortunate to actually have the opportunity to design a family center. And that was a really great experience to do that, because it really impacts a lot of people who don't have a lot. And they go into a center and they say they feel warm and protected. So that's an important part of what we as designers do.
Because there's a lot of what we do that is really necessary and vital and important, and we're changing people's lives. At the same time, we know as business owners that not everybody can afford our services, and that what we do is a luxury. We're in a luxury industry. But at the same time, when we are able to give back and help people that maybe aren't our typical client, it's amazing.
It is. It's a really great gift.